track is ultra difficult. In corners, you can't breathe at all because you're so tense. Here, miss the first apex and then you gotta hit the second one. Which driver are you most anxious about when they appear in your mirrors? That is the easiest question in the world. Welcome back everybody to F1 Fridays, and this weekend it's the Mexican Grand Prix. A track that I really know well and I love because I was the first winner in 2015, and why it was so special. I mean, in that stadium, in that baseball stadium, everybody was like chanting Nico, because I speak Spanish, so in the build-up I was a lot on the local TV and everything, so I think kind of they warmed up to me and it was very, very special. Incredible memory. The track, however, is ultra difficult, and it's mainly down to the tarmac. The tarmac, for some reason, it's really not grippy at all, so you can hardly feel the limit of the car, and especially with these cars now that are very snappy on the rear, it would be like, I mean, horror on that track, I'm quite sure. So you're going into a corner, you just don't know when is that snap gonna come, you know, and it's very, very difficult to get the tires to work properly. And of course, also super high in altitude. High altitude means that there's very low air pressure. Low air pressure means that all the aerodynamics on the car don't work as well, and therefore you have a lot less grip in general, so you're sliding around more. So all that makes it very, very demanding. Okay, now let's jump into the hot lap first, and I nailed this lap, so it'll be quite fun to watch. But before we get going, your chance to win a surprise giveaway from me, and the question this week that you have to answer in the comment below is the following. So what was your favorite piece of action on the track, or on the radio, or on the podium, or whatever this year in Formula One? If you get the top trending comment on this video, so the most liked comment, I'll send you a surprise giveaway. So good luck with that. And now let's go hot lap. Acht en vier. So now we're going to jump right into the slow lap, where I'm going to help and show you all the analysis of the racetrack. So starting on the straight already, it's really like crowned, you know, the racetrack. So in the first year especially, it's quite funny how nobody runs like right on the edge of the track here on the straight. Everybody kind of runs like 1-2 meters away here, and that's where the crown is like quite bad. So there's a lot of bottoming. And so I was always trying to look for every detail of improvement. So I was looking on the straight for a better line with less bottoming, and I found it like right on the edge of the track here. There was a lot less bottoming, and no one else found it for the whole weekend. So even in qualifying, not even Lewis. And so here I had less bottoming, so of course the car was dragging less on the straight, and I had 400ths of him on him every single lap just on this straight. So that was something that was very cool. Coming down here after the start, man, this is so difficult because you're coming with high speed, you have no idea where the braking point is. So what I used to do is I used to look at the start from previous years. Of course, in Mexico in the first year, there was no previous year. So there it was really guesswork. But from then on, look at previous years and then memorize a braking point, you know, really like stick to it. There's a braking point on the outside, 80, and a braking point on the inside, which is a little bit more distance, which is 100, because then you have a tighter corner. So I was really memorizing that and then just stick to that plan and brake on that point. And then so it was 80 meters on the outside. You got third gear here. important to hit the apex, because if not, everything, the rest of it is completely messed up. You can see the dark traces, which is more or less where you need to be. So try and stay right here, because it's really important to try and carry the speed through this next snake section here. Third, fourth upshift, and then just carry the speed out. Hit the DRS here. There was no special line on this straight. So 8th gear again then, and then at 80 again, full brakes at 80. 3rd gear, stay tight because the next corner is so damn tight. 2nd gear, and then turn in quite late and just try and carry the speed, use the whole track all the way to out. Then straight line again, and here don't brake too hard and just try and double apex it. So miss the first apex and then you got to hit the second one, okay, to make it a little bit of a round corner. So you miss the first one a little bit, you hit the second one, then you make it out on the curb here. Okay, now this section's so difficult. Usually it's brake balance forwards here because the rear, as I said before, is just so nervous, so it really helps to load the fronts up more to calm down the rear a little bit. So you put brake balance forwards, and then it's really just a light braking, maybe even keep a bit of throttle on again to move that brake balance forwards, keeping the rear planted and calm. And then downshift 5th gear, really try and use the whole track here. So use all the way out here, and then you're back on power, flat, 5th gear, 6th gear, and scrub as little speed as possible, 7th gear. And now this, I mean, it's crazy. In my time, it was even a little brake, off throttle, whatever. Now it's like almost flat in qualifying. It's crazy. So 7th gear, a little lift at most. Come in here and then flat and just take this next corner flat out again. Use all the track to scrub the least possible speed. Here we go. Okay, now we come into the stadium section. The tires are raging hot by now and they don't have much time to cool down on the straight. You brake at 80, 4th gear, carry the speed in, go wide here, but you have to make it back and be straight for braking for the next part. So come back, that's the most important, huh? Straight for braking, 2nd gear, brake balance a little bit rearwards, otherwise you're going to be lock up front here so much, so brake balance rearwards for this. And then quite late turn-in because the exit you need to stay tight, so it's quite late turn-in, and then try and stay middle of the track on the exit. Then just a 3rd gear early upshift, little short lift, and try and really aggressive, get the power down here, early braking again here, and then just carry the speed through. Careful not to run out too wide because otherwise you lose a hell of a lot of time. And then just so early on the throttle as possible here, use the whole track, and then let the car run, let the car run out wide, use all the track, upshift as cleanly as possible, and that's the end of the lap. Okay, that's it. So now we go into the Q&A session. Okay, question 1 from Julian. The Mexico GP circuit is higher than any other track on the calendar, 2 kilometers above sea level. What impact does this have on the car? What has it done to optimize performance? So first of all, I mean, drag is less, but also downforce is less. So what you do is you run a lot more higher downforce than usual because there's less drag anyways because the air is lighter. So down the straight, so you have to compromise that with some higher downforce. What else do you do? Oh, well, surely also the whole engine cooling situation is totally different, because the air is a lot less dense, so it will be able to cool a lot less going into the air side pods or whatever. So the engine cooling opening is going to be a lot bigger to let more air through, more airflow. So those are the kind of things that you need to think of. Question 2, Zaid, how is fuel managed throughout a race? Is it managed on a lap by lap basis or less frequency? So fuel is a big thing in a race. Like, we have to manage so much as a driver because the optimum race performance, so the fastest way from start to end of race, is always going to be with some fuel managing, because you gain so much more by having less fuel in the car, by being a lot lighter every single lap, than you lose by doing that little bit of fuel management like driving style every lap. So that's why it's just it's naturally going to drive you towards needing to save fuel throughout the whole race, because that's the fastest way from start to finish. So what do you do? First of all, you have on your display a kind of like a bar, yeah? And center is your bullseye on the fuel plan. If the bar goes that way, you're negative. If it goes that way, you're positive. So you can use up more fuel, or there you need to save more. And it kind of varies. It goes lap to lap, it recalibrates and shows you where you are. But it also really helps for your engineer to give you guidance on that, because it's very difficult to know how much fuel you need to save to get that bar back on a slow basis all the way to center in time for the end of the race. So the engineer will also help you with that. Now, how do you save fuel? Saving fuel, the best way to save fuel is at the end of the straight, before you come to the braking area, you lift off, say 50 meters before braking, and it's called lift and coast. So you lift off, so then you're coasting down the straight, so you're losing a little bit of speed, but you're still coasting, and then you brake after that. And for some reason, you really don't lose much time there by doing that coasting. It's really like only hundredths. So like a couple of hundredths in turn one, a couple of hundredths, so it's like up to a tenth or a tenth and a half or 2 tenths. So there's really not much lap time. And the higher the speed, the longer the coasting you can afford to do, because you lose less time. If you do a long coasting whilst you're approaching a slow speed corner at low speed, you'll lose a lot more time. So that's why every corner is different. So the highest speed you arrive, that's where the coasting is longest. So turn 1, you can do 50 meters of coasting. Turn 3, 40. Turn 6, you do like 10 meters. And so you really have to optimize that for each corner, for each speed that you're arriving with. And that's the challenge. And every lap you have to change that as well, because then they say use more fuel. So then turn 1 it's 40 meters. Turn 3 is 30 meters. So you have to bring every turn a little bit closer. So it's really an art. Big challenge. Another thing you can do is on the downshifting, you can downshift later so that the peak RPM in each new gear is lower, you know, so you bring all those upshift RPM, downshift RPM lower in general, so you downshift much closer to the corner, listen to the sound, bum 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 bum, or later, bum 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 bum, you know, that's the difference if you downshift later. That was funny, wasn't it? And then after that, what else can you do? Upshift earlier as well, so that you don't go into the high RPM zone when you're coming out of corners. So use higher gears, upshift. That's another trick. You can use less engine braking as well. No, the opposite. Engine braking reduces fuel consumption if you keep it, because the way to reduce engine braking is actually by the computer applying a little bit of throttle as you're going through the middle of corners. So of course that will consume more fuel. So the higher the engine braking, the less fuel you're consuming, but it makes the rear so nervous. So that's always a bit of a compromise there. Okay, so that's a bit of a thorough answer there. Question 3 from Isaiah. Have you ever completed several poor consecutive laps in a Formula 1 race? If yes, which mental state were you in and what did you do right there and there to improve? Completed several poor laps. Yes, you get into this kind of phase where you just feel that you're not driving very well, the car is not to your liking, you know, and it's really quite a negative spiral. Sometimes you can still be quicker than anybody else on the track, but it's difficult to know sometimes because it just feels so terrible. So there, I worked a lot with my engineer to keep positive, like positive comments, like bullish comments in my ear. Keep going, Nico, you're doing great job, you know, to motivate me. And then also there at that point in time, it's important to work with the engineer and to see if there's any way to find progress. I mean, simple things like reduce tire pressures, increase the front flap or reduce the front flap depending on what problem you have out there, because there's something that leads to you driving not well. It's not, I mean, as a driver, as a world champion, you don't drive poorly lap after lap, you know, it's something that leads to you driving not well, which is usually the car or conditions or whatever. So you need to try and figure out what it is and then fix it, you know, and that's where the world champions really are so much better than like young rookies. They will have the capacity in those situations to really think about all the tools available to them, what's happening and what can you do to improve. Example, you're starting to have a lot of oversteer in slow speed corners. You know, there's various tools that you could use. You could reduce engine braking. You could reduce the front flap to make the aero balance. You could otherwise put the brake balance forwards. You know, or increase the diff locking. There's so many things, and so it's really important to have capacity to think which is the right tool at what moment. And I think that's something that Fernando Alonso, for example, is extremely strong at in racing, to always have that capacity to think about situations, strategy, setup in the racing, driving style, you know, learning as you're going. That's really a big challenge, and something I think that Michael Schumacher also really excelled at. So, question 4, Big Jeff. Which driver were you most anxious about when they appeared in your rearview mirrors? That is the easiest question in the world, Max Verstappen, even though also Daniel Ricciardo actually, but Max Verstappen. And coming here to Mexico, oh my goodness, I was fighting for the world championship, and somehow miraculously, even though I was due to be 6th in qualifying because I was feeling so uncomfortable out there, I actually managed to nail the last possible lap and I jumped up to 2nd on the grid. And then I had Max Verstappen next to me or behind me, and we had 2 comings together. And I had to kind of finish 2nd to keep my championship hopes alive, or 3rd worst case. And then at the start, Max just braked way too late, locked up the inside, understeered right into me, knocked my tires. I decided then to just drive over the grass to try and keep ahead of him, which worked out. And then later on in the race, again, he was behind me. He threw himself down the inside in turn 4, and he just went flying straight on. He missed his braking point, so I was lucky there. But man, it was always so uncomfortable to have Max behind, because he's the one who took the most risk also usually especially back in those days. Question 5, Felipe. What is the biggest thing about being a Formula 1 driver or driving a Formula 1 car that racing fans are most unaware of? It's gotta be the girls. I mean, Jesus, so many girls. It's like unbelievable. Like I had to have my physio, like, you know, like helping me to keep my hotel room door, like, you know, push them out. No, I'm just kidding. The most, what was the question actually? I got confused. The biggest thing about being a Formula 1 driver that fans are not aware about. I mean, let me just, the example that comes to mind is that I sweat and lose 3.5 kilograms of body weight in one single race, like in Singapore. 3.5 kilograms, you know how much that is? That's 5% of my body weight just from sweating. So in the end, you're almost like in a hallucinating state, you know, you're hardly able to concentrate, you know, everything starts to go a little bit and you still have to perform, you know, in the last couple of laps. So, so I have 1 liter in the car to hydrate with electrolytes, but it's not enough. So that's something that's a big challenge, and afterwards you're just destroyed, you know. We went partying anyways, but you're still destroyed after that race. So that's something maybe you don't know in that detail, how physically demanding it can be, because you're sitting behind fuel that's right behind you. It's 70 degrees. You're sitting on the floor. You know, the car is all like most of the time in contact with the floor. The ground is 40, 50 degrees. You're sitting on it. You have like a skiing suit on, you know, helmet is closed. You can't breathe. And then the carbon seat doesn't breathe either. It's like fully locked around your body. Seat belts have to be tight for safety, so you can't actually expand your lungs. You have the seat in here, you have the seat belt on top, super tight. You can't expand your lungs. So all you can do is breathe like super shallow. You can never take a deep breath, so you're breathing super shallow. And in corners you can't breathe at all because you're so tense trying to just keep your position in the car, trying to keep the steering wheel. You're so tense you can't breathe in corners. You're like, you know, keeping everything. So there we go. That's one of the toughest things. Thanks for watching. Again, answer the question to get a surprise giveaway from me. What is your most awesome moment of Formula 1 this year? Whether it's funny or scary, or it's a radio message or an overtake, whatever. I look forward to hearing your message below. Good luck with that. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe if you're new to my YouTube channel. Subscribe now. Hit the bell. Thank you. See you for the next one. Have a nice race weekend.